Do you remember the drive-in? I mean, really remember it. Not the postcard version. I mean the real thing. Like the little metal speaker that you hung on your window, the one that sounded just terrible. All that tin and hiss, no bass, like the movie was shouting at you from the bottom of a swimming pool. And the glass, it was fogging up from everybody just breathing, and you're wiping a little porthole clear with your sleeve just to see out. And the crunch of the gravel, the bugs, and somebody's cigarette drifting over from 2 cars down. And up on that screen, just like big as a building, some of the worst movies ever made. Cheap monsters, guys in rubber suits. A lot of the time, it was horror, the kind of thing you'd laugh at in the daylight without a second thought. And yet, some of it scared the crap out of you, and you can still feel that, right now, all these years later. One image, one sound, and the hair goes up on your arms. That's what I want to talk about today. Not the movie, but the feeling that the movie created and where it actually came from. Hey, I'm Dan, and welcome to Retro Vault. So here's what this show is. We're going to sit around, and we're going to talk about what it was like what it actually felt like to watch movies in the previous century. Not the movies themselves. I'm not ranking anything here. I'm not going to hand you a top 10 like I normally do, or tell you what holds up and what doesn't. This is a podcast, and I want to talk about the watching of movies. Like where we were back then, who we were with, what it smelled like, why it scared the shit out of you, and whether the movie had anything even to do with it. Now I'm going to be straight with you. This one's kind of for my generation, or the people around my generation. If you were there, you already know. And if you weren't, if all of this is before your time, then honestly, some of this might not land for you. Hey, no hard feelings. Pull up a chair anyways. You might find out what your parents were really up to, because that's the deal here. Every episode, we're going to go back in time, and we're going to climb into something that doesn't exist anymore, and we're just going to sit in it for a while. And tonight, we're going to go all the way out to the gravel lot at the edge of town, because we're going to talk about the drive-in, and one thing in particular, how dangerous it felt, and why that was. So let's get started by going low back in time, because you really have to be there before any of this even makes sense. So it was a summer night, sometime between when your parents were young and when you were. It doesn't really matter the exact year. The drive-in, it didn't change that much. You've come out to the edge of town, past where the streetlights give up, to a field somebody paved with gravel and pointed at the sky. There were 4,500 of these at the peak. One out of every 3 movie screens in America was sitting outdoors in a field just like this one. That's not a fad. That's a decision that people would rather watch movies from their car. It started in a driveway way back in 1933 in New Jersey. A man named Hollingshead nails a screen up between 2 poles in his yard, props a projector on the hood of his car, sets a radio behind the screen for sound, and spends his evenings working out how to space the cars so the ones in the back can see over the ones in the front. Then he patents the whole idea. And just listen to his pitch, right there at the very beginning. The whole family. Come as you are. Talk if you want. Smoke if you want. Let the baby cry, because nobody's going to shush you, because you're sealed inside your own little steel living room. That's the promise the drive-in was born with. Not danger, but comfort, privacy. But they're on your terms, with your people. One owner of the oldest lots in the country described how these things actually got built at the start. A bed sheet strung between 2 poles, a little bullhorn underneath, a tabletop projector, just completely homemade. Whatever people had lying around, and that was the seed. And within 20 years, there were 4,000 of them stitched across America. And that ritual, it barely changed in 30 years. You come in off the highway, you pay your carload at the booth, and you roll slow across the gravel, just hunting for a spot. The lot, they weren't even flat. They graded it into like little humps with little ramps, so the nose of your car tilts up and aims you at the screen, and you just ease up onto one. Then you reach out the window for the speaker. It was this cold, dented metal box on a cord, and you hook it to the glass. And now you're wired in. You're part of the show. Now, if you got there early, which everybody got there early, because the show can't start until the sky says so. So there's this long, soft hour when nothing's happening, yet everything is happening. The kids, they're down in front. Sometimes there's a playground, swings, slide, sometimes even a little train, just bolted into the dirt directly underneath the screen, the size of an apartment building. Now just think about that. The most wholesome thing in America, a swing set, parked at the foot of the thing that you drove out here to be a little bit afraid of. Somebody's dad is warming a baby bottle on the engine block. Somebody's mom laid the back of the station wagon flat and made a bed out of it, like pillows and everything, so the little ones can just pass out before the second feature. Kids, they're there in their pajamas. I remember going in my own footy pajamas, standing in the back, and this was just normal. You came to the movie dressed for bed. And look around at who's actually here, because it does matter before this is over. It's not who you think. It's not actually full of teenagers steaming up the windows. It's mostly families, couples, grandparents, and there's just kids everywhere. The car to your left is a dad who worked all week and just wants to fall asleep in the driver's seat by the second reel. The car to your right might be teenagers with entirely different plans, right? Same gravel, same speaker, same screen, just completely different nights. The drive-in, it was never just one thing, and everybody who tells you it was, including me, is simplifying just to make a better story. I can totally remember the smell because it smelled like warm popcorn and hot engines and cut grass. Like underneath it all, there was this sweet, like green chemical smoke because the lot's own fog truck is crawling the aisle, spraying for bugs, and you're rolling your windows up fast. That's the drive-in. It was cheap, domestic, and a place that your parents took you because it was safe. Let's hold on to the word safe, right? We're going to need that a little later because it's not going to fit. Because here's what I want you to know tonight. This safe, corny, family place with the swings and the pajamas and the baby bottles, somehow it's also the place where a whole generation of us saw the first thing that actually frightened us. Out of a tin speaker on a giant screen in a movie that, on paper, was probably a piece of junk. How does a place this gentle make junk feel so dangerous? So eventually, the sun, it finally quits, and the screen, it lights up. And let's just be honest about what's on it. It was trash. Glorious, magnificent trash. Giant bugs, a blob, maybe a 50-foot woman, a rubber thing from a lagoon, and later, when the teenagers took over, something a lot sweatier than that. These are not, for the most part, like good movies, but they were never really trying to be. And I'm going to say that with total love, because I do love them. I still do. I talk about them every day on this channel. There's a purity to a movie that only wants to show you a rubber monster and send you home happy. No lessons, no prestige, no ambition, nothing is woke, just a giant spider attacking a small town. A thing that crawls, a creature from like someplace wet. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they never once apologized for it. And that's something clean about it that I've missed like my whole life ever since. Because there was an entire industry built to feed this exact feel. Not the big studios. They were making prestige pictures for the nice theaters way downtown. The ones with the carpet and the guy in the uniform. No. The drive-in, it had its own suppliers. Outfits like American International, Crown International, Independent guys who understood something the studios didn't. They understood that out here, the movie, it didn't have to carry the whole night. You just think about how the money actually worked, right? You didn't buy a ticket. You bought a carload for like $2 and everybody's in, which means the guy who owns this lot, he's not really in the movie business. He's in the popcorn business. The movie is a thing he plays to keep you parked long enough so you'll walk up to the snack bar 3 or 4 times. There was a line the exhibitors passed around. If you owned a drive-in, you should think of yourself as a restaurant owner who happens to show movies. Not a theater man, a restaurant man, because the concession stand at the drive-in could pull several times what an indoor house made on candy. You came hungry, you came for hours, and you were a captive crowd in the dark with nothing else to do. The film, it was just bait. The burger was the business. So they want you there for hours. That's why they had the double features, right? That's the dusk to dawn, 4 movies till the sun comes up idea. And to fill all those cheap hours, you need a product. It needs to be fast, loud, and lurid with a poster that does 90% of the work before you even park the car. The independents, they gave it to them. They'd sell the title and the poster first, then go make the movie. A great title and a scary painting with a promise. The film itself, I mean, it could be 40 minutes of nothing and 8 minutes of monster. And out here, that was just plenty. The audience was busy. They were eating. They were flirting. They were breaking up a fight in the backseat between your little brother and the mosquito. You watch the movie the way you watch a fire, out of the corner of your eye, glancing over whenever it flared. And the movies, they knew this. They were built for the corner of your eye. They were loose and they were simple. A monster shows up, gets bigger, the end. You could miss like 10 minutes, chasing a spilled soda, and really just lose absolutely nothing. And, you know, you cheated. Everybody cheated. The whole lot ran on it. If they're charging by the car, then the sacred teenage game is, how many bodies can you get into one car for the price of a single car? So you and your buddies, you fold it into the trunk back at the gas station down the road, and you're just praying for the guy at the booth doesn't count heads. And then you get in. You drive to a far dark spot, pop the trunk, and everybody spills out laughing. And then somebody's pounding on the inside of the fender because, well, you forgot them back there when you went for popcorn. If you've been to a drive-in when you were young, everybody's got that story. It might be the single most told drive-in memory that there is. And when you go looking for the hard evidence, like the box office records, the trade magazines, the trunk thing, it actually barely shows up. It was just a minor nuisance here and there. The truth is, the tickets, they were run by teenagers taking cash in the dark, and nobody was really counting. So the trunk sneak, it's like enormous in our memory and tiny in the record. We told the story bigger than it ever really was, because the story, it was the whole point, wasn't it? And by the time you and I got like out there watching movies, like in the 70s, the movies, they started to get harder. I mean, they started as giant bugs for the whole family, but the audience that matters now, like the one with a license and a Friday night and nobody watching over their shoulder, it was the teenagers. And the product, it bends towards them. And the movies became faster, meaner, sweatier, with titles that promised things that the polished theaters downtown would never dare put up on the marquee. And out here, at the soft edge of town where the rules got a bit blurry, the drive-in could get away with playing them. That's part of the charge, too. You were fairly sure you were watching something that you probably weren't supposed to. You just weren't sure your parents knew what they dropped you into. That should be the end of the story, right? Cheap movies, half-watched, in a field, just to sell popcorn. Cynical, efficient, totally forgettable. So explain something to me. If it was all so forgettable, why can you still feel that right now? I mean, there's movies that you saw that feel like it was yesterday, right? And the movies, they probably can't explain it. It has to be something else, right? It had to be The Room. Here's the part that everybody's nostalgic about, yet nobody thinks about. The sound. And the screen, it was absolutely enormous. A monster on this thing was 4 stories tall, and the sound of that monster is coming at you through this. A cast aluminum box the size of a lunchbox thermos hanging off your half-open window on a cord, pumping a 4-inch paper cone that's been rained on for 15 summers in mono. No bass, no highs, a voice like it's calling you from the bottom of a well through a sock. Half the time, it didn't even work. You'd pull in, hook it up, and just get nothing but a hum. So you drive up a road, try another one. Some nights you just lean towards the window and the whole car leaned with you, straining to catch the dialogue off a speaker the size of your hand. And that speaker, it took a beating. It hung out there through like winter time. And the classic move, the one that everybody did at least once, is you forgot it was there. Movie's over, mom and dad's tired, kids are asleep, you put the car in drive, you pull away with the damn thing still clamped to your window. Now you own a speaker, like the theater's short one, and the entire row, they heard it happen. And that was the strange thing about this place. 100 cars in the dark, everybody sealed inside their own little box, all watching the same giant whatever at the same time. And you were just completely alone in a crowd at the exact same moment. Nobody's built anything quite like it sits. Now, sit with what that does. You've got the biggest image of your life right in front of you, and almost none of the information. You can see the monster, but you can't hear it. Not really. So what does your brain do? It fills in the gap. It has to. That's not a flaw. That's the whole machine right there. When the sound is too thin to carry the fear, your own head picks up the fear and carries it the rest of the way. You're not watching a scary movie. You're being handed a rough sketch of one, and quietly, without noticing, you're finishing it yourself, in the dark, with your own worst material. And your own car, it's fighting you the whole time. It's summer, right? So the windows, they're down, and every bug in the county, it totally wants in. There's a mosquito coil burning on the dashboard, and you're just slapping your own necks. Or maybe it's fall, and it's getting cold. You've got the heater running, which means the engine's on, which means at 1 a.m, when the second feature finally ends, you turn the key and get that, a dead battery, in a field, in the dark. And now you're flagging down a stranger for a jump while the credits roll in a movie nobody was watching anyways. The car was your shelter and your cage all at the same time. It kept the world out, but it kept you in, sealed in that box of your own breath and smoke, peering out at something enormous. And it just keeps getting better because, right? You're barely looking. You're catching the monster in glimpses, between wiping the fog off the glass, between whatever's happening in the front seat or the back seat. And a glimpse is so much worse than a look. Because a rubber suit you stare at for like a full minute, it's a guy in a suit. A rubber suit you catch for half a second, like sideways through smeared glass, who's 40 feet tall, with the sound like something's drowning, that thing is going to visit you at 3 a.m. for the next 40 years. This is the oldest trick in horror, and the drive-in did it by accident, totally for free, every single night. The scariest thing in any movie is the thing you didn't quite get to see. The shark you don't show. The shape at the edge of the frame. Real filmmakers work so damn hard for that. They starve you of the monster on purpose, so your imagination does the heavy lifting. And here's a gravel lot full of cheap pictures that couldn't afford to show you much anyways, played through a speaker that couldn't even tell you much either, watched by people who weren't fully looking at it. Deprivation on top of deprivation on top of deprivation. Perfect accidental horror machine. Nobody designed it. It just happened to you in the dark while you were reaching for the popcorn. I'm not making like a poetic point here. There's this woman who remembered watching from outside the fence, too far to hear a thing, trying to read the actor's lips across a dark field. A giant silent movie for an audience of one, in the weeds, at the edge of light. What do you think that does to you? And Most of us, when we saw these, we were kids, right? That's the part we skip over. A lot of us met our first real fear out here way too young, from the backseat, watching something built for people twice or maybe even 3 times our age because there was nobody at the door checking. You couldn't hear it, right? I mean, you could barely see it. You really didn't even understand half of what was happening. And that is exactly why this worked. Understanding is a kind of safety. Out here, you had none of that. You just had the dark and the smear of light and whatever your own head decided the shape on the edge of the frame was going to be. And in your head, at that age, you had some ideas. Okay, so here's why I dragged you out for this gravel lot story. The drive-in didn't show you scary movies. The drive-in built a machine for making any movie scary. Take a giant picture, strip the sound down to a roomer, sit a person in a private box who's half distracted, doing the work themselves. You could run a laundry commercial through that machine and somebody would probably have nightmares years later. The monster was never the thing on the screen. The monster, it was in the room, and the room knew exactly what it was. You hear that, right? That's not a theater warning you away from danger. That's a theater advertising it, because the danger was the whole product, not the film. The privacy, the car, a dark little room you could park in public and pull the door shut. And that's what you paid $2 for. The movie was just the alibi you gave your parents. Now, let me complicate the beautiful thing I just told you, because if I don't, I'm just going to be lying to you. And I don't need to do that, right? Because the honest truth here is that the drive-in was also, well, mostly exactly as innocent as your parents thought it was. Somebody actually studied this. They surveyed the lots, they counted the cars way back in the day. And you know what they found? Teenagers, they were the minority. Most of the cars were married couples, over 30, with kids asleep in the back. And more than half the cars had children in them. The passion pit, the whole sweaty legend we all carry around, the numbers, they barely support it. The owners hated that reputation, and they fought it. They put in playgrounds on purpose. They hired off-duty cops to walk the rows with flashlights and knock on the foggy windows and ask for your ticket stub. Some of these places, they played the national anthem before the first feature and made the whole lot sit at attention. On Sunday mornings, a lot of these same lots rented themselves out to churches. You'd park on the gravel, face the screen tower, and the preacher's sermon would come pipe straight into your car through the same tin speaker that gave you nightmares on Friday night. Saturday, it was probably a flea market. The drive-in wasn't a temple of sin. It was a community center that happened to get dark and strange at about 9:30. So the danger I've been selling you all episode on, a lot of it we just made up after the fact because it makes a better story than I watched a monster movie in my pajamas next to my sleeping sister. The moral panic crowd made some of it too, right? There were newspaper scare campaigns that kids were supposedly dying of carbon monoxide, running the heater in the wintertime, mostly cooked up to scare city councils into denying permits. Same as always. The thing gets called dangerous by the people who want it gone, and by the people who loved it, but just for opposite reasons. And both of them are exaggerating. But here's what isn't exaggerated. Here's what we lost. It did die. Slowly, then like all at once. The land, it got too valuable. 100 acres of gravel on the edge of a growing town. I mean, some developer's gonna make you an offer you just can't refuse, and up goes the strip mall where the screen used to be. Daylight savings time pushed the start time cruelly late. The multiplex opened, warm and carpeted, sound in every seat. And then the video store put the whole damn thing in your living room. Now, the drive-in lots that hung on sometimes did it by getting seedier. There's an owner in the 70s who flipped his place to hard R-rated material. And the neighbors noticed. And the complaints started. And the town started making some noise. That's a venue eating itself to survive. And there's the thing that breaks the tidy little story. The wholesome family lot and the sticky, desperate lot were sometimes the same lot. maybe 10 years apart, depending on what kept the lights on that season. The place couldn't afford to be only just one thing. And somewhere in there, they finally fixed the sound. They threw out the tin speakers and started broadcasting the audio to your car radio. Clean, in stereo, both channels, and no hum. And I want you to notice something about that. They fixed the one thing that was broken, the bad sound. The exact flaw I just spent like 10 minutes telling you was the secret engine of the whole experience. And they made it sound good. And in doing that, without meaning to, they turned the lights on inside the machine. When you can hear every line clean and clear, your brain stops doing the work. It just sits back, it relaxes, and the gap closes. And that monster, the monster is just a guy in a suit again. And that's the trade we made everywhere, not only out here. We spent 50 years making everything cleaner, sharper pictures, cleaner sound. Every movie we made, instantly in your pocket in perfect high definition. And every single upgrade closed the gap just a little bit more. Took a little more of the work away from you. Handed you a little more of the monster, fully rendered with nothing left to finish. We got exactly what we asked for. Oh, it's gorgeous. And it cannot touch you the way a broken speaker in a gravel field could touch you when you were 12 years old, because it never once asked you to help. And somebody had to close each one. Some family that ran the same lot for 40 years took your carload money, salted your popcorn, walked the rows with flashlights, played the anthem every single night, and turned the projector off one last time. Then they locked the booth, sold the land, because they had to. There's never a funeral for these things. One summer, it's open, and the next summer, there's a chain link fence, and then there's a big box store, and the people who spent every Friday of their childhood just drive past it for the rest of their lives, pointing and going, well, that used to be, well, whoever's in the passenger seat has absolutely no idea what the hell they're talking about. And that's the picture that gets me. Not the demolished screens, the poles. Rows and rows of little metal poles standing in a field, and every speaker has gone off of them. The thing that scared us, unhooked and hauled away, and nobody ever kept it, because who keeps a broken speaker? So you're probably wondering, did the danger die with the drive-in? When they pulled the last speaker off the pole, did it go quiet for good? No, of course not. It just moved. It went indoors, and it got a bit smaller. It found the one place left in the house that was still a little bit forbidden, still a little bit yours, still lit by a screen in the dark while everybody else was asleep. It went to the video store, onto a shelf, into a box, with a painting that promised more than the tape inside could ever deliver. Same trick. The poster was doing the work. The promise was scarier than the thing on the tape. A whole new machine for making junk feel dangerous. And we walked right into it because that's how we'd been trained. Out here in the gravel, in our pajamas. And we keep carrying it. Every screen that came after was still a version of that car. The little one in your bedroom at 2 a.m. The one that glowed through the scrambled cable channel you weren't paying for. The one in your pocket, probably right now. A private dark, a promise, and you alone in the light. We learned that here first, on a gravel ramp at the edge of town with that tin can hanging off the window. That monster was never on the screen. It was in the car with you. It was you, in the dark, finishing the sketch in your head. And the night they finally fixed the sound, that's the night the movies got safe. Hey, I'm Dan. Thanks for parking with me tonight. And next time, the box you couldn't stop staring at and the movie that never lived up to it, will bring your library card, because that's what we're going to talk about. And until then, keep it weird, folks.